It's your first trip to Egypt, and your new friends there invited you for lunch. The food seems a bit dull, so you decide to spice it up with salt and pepper. You don't see it on the table, so you ask the host for it, and you notice everyone's shocked. It turns out it's a huge insult to the cook when someone wants to change the original taste of the food on their plate. The cook made it that way for a reason, and wanting to spice it up means showing that the dish wasn't good enough. You're used to doing it as a kind gesture around the world, but don't tip waiters, taxi drivers, or hotel workers in Japan. They can get offended because they already get paid for providing you with good service, and there's no need for extra money to make it any better. If you really want to show appreciation, just say thank you. It's okay to tip private guides, tour companies, and interpreters. You can put any amount that feels right to you in an envelope and hand it down to them. If you want to impress your new Japanese friends or colleagues, take some time to study chopstick etiquette. When you master the art of holding chopsticks, remember not to rub them together. People do it to remove splinters, so it might look like you're unhappy with the quality of the pair that your host provided you with. Don't put your chopsticks vertically in your bowl of rice. This way, it can be seen as an offering to the deceased. Don't wave chopsticks in the air or use them to point at things. Both are considered really rude. The same is with moving things with your chopsticks or the hand holding them. It looks disrespectful. Plus, you're likely to spill things. When in Italy, don't order a cappuccino after noon. The locals don't do it because they believe the milk and foam turn this drink into a meal, and it's not good for digestion. Also, be prepared to enjoy your coffee standing at the bar and pay for it before you even order it. First, you pay the cash register, then show the receipt to the server to get your drink. Are you a big fan of chewing gum? Well, you'll have an uneasy time in Singapore. Using, selling, and importing chewing gum is banned there, and you'd have to pay up to several thousands of dollars for doing it. This law was introduced in the 1990s to make the city cleaner and keep the local fast trains up to schedule. When they launched a new transit system, passengers stuck gum onto train door sensors, causing some serious delays. With the new rules, this problem was solved. The no gum policy, along with many other strict rules, did help to make Singapore a really clean and fine city. Pun intended. If you absolutely can't imagine your life without chewing, the local authorities recommend replacing the gum with bananas. When someone asks you to pass them something, like salt at the table in Bolivia, don't give it directly to them. Hand it to the person sitting next to them, and they'll pass it for you. If the person next to you is asking for that little favor, you still can't hand it straight to them. The person next to you will have to help. This table etiquette comes from a superstition that handing something to someone directly into their hands brings bad luck. For the same reasons, you can't reach across the table or stand up to pass something or toss it to someone. And don't forget to keep both hands on the table when you aren't eating. It might look like you're trying to hide something if your hands aren't visible at all times. When you arrive for a meal in Jordan, the hosts may give you some bitter Arabic coffee as a warm welcome. Don't try to stretch it for the rest of the evening. The polite thing to do is empty it fast. Only when everyone's done with the drink do people go back to socializing. As you pass the empty cup to the hosts, make sure to jiggle your wrists. If you just pass it without jiggling, it will mean you're asking for a refill. Don't rush to arrive at an event on time in Venezuela. People might think that you're rude or greedy. The polite thing to do is to be 10 to 15 minutes late. Events scheduled for 7 o'clock will often begin at 8 o'clock or later. A popular story goes that in the 1980s, a foreign reporter arrived at a press event more than an hour late. When he saw the room was mostly empty, he went to apologize to the host for missing the event. The host then told him he was the first reporter to arrive. It's quite interesting because the clocks in this country have officially been 0.9 seconds ahead of the rest of the world for years. Are you planning to travel by bus in Ireland anytime soon? Don't forget to thank the driver for the ride on your way out of the bus. You'll hear an overwhelming majority of locals do it loudly, as it's basically not optional. Choose the gift wisely if you've been invited to a home in Vietnam. It's okay to bring fruit, sweets, or incense. Handkerchiefs are believed to be a symbol of a sad farewell, and cutting tools are a sign of cutting relationships. So don't bring those. Wrap your gift in colorful paper and don't opt for black. The locals believe this color to be a bad omen. When you present the gift, hold it with both hands. And don't be surprised if the hosts don't open it right away. It's done after the giver has left. Don't leave anything on your plate in India. It's a sign of disrespect for the food you were served. Food is considered sacred in the country, so it would upset your hosts a lot. So, wash and dry your hands before starting the meal. Don't forget to praise the cook and wait for the eldest to stand up before you leave the table. In South India, it's common to serve food on a banana leaf. You gotta fold it over from the top when you're done with the meal. Folding it from the bottom means you weren't satisfied with what you got. It might be a good conversation starter elsewhere, but don't brag about your achievements in Denmark. The locals believe that everyone is equal. So, you won't hear them talk about their successful careers or talents, or how special they are. And they expect the same from you. If you're looking for a good topic, they'll gladly talk to you about the greatness of their country. The Danes are really proud of it and all its wonders. If you're going on a trip to Germany and plan to drive on the famous Autobahn, make sure to tank up before you hit the road. Stopping, parking, making U-turns, and backing up on this super speedy highway is illegal. Yes, even if you have to stop because you've run out of gas, you'll have to pay a fine since you were supposed to plan things better. And although the Autobahn technically doesn't have a speed limit, watch out if you're passing by urban areas like Frankfurt, Berlin, and Munich, or construction works and heavy traffic. There will be special speed instructions for these spots. In case you're planning to explore Cyprus by car, quench your thirst before you start the vehicle. Drinking anything, including water, isn't allowed while driving on the island. So if you can't resist snacking or drinking behind the wheel, prepare to pay a fine. In Ethiopia, you gotta think twice before choosing a gift for someone. They see it as a debt they'll have to repay in the future. So, if you bring something really expensive, the receiver will either have to spend a lot of money on a return gift or feel indebted to you.
300,000 people and over 80,000 horses. Yep, that's Iceland. The breed they have there is very specific, hardy, long-lived, and because of it, internationally popular. These horses can be found in North America and Europe too, but they can have certain features people from Iceland don't want their breed to have. Because of that, the Icelanders wanted to avoid mixing their horses with other breeds, so they passed a law over 1,000 years ago that said no horse imports. That's right, even if they give you some of their own horses, you can't take them back. No chewing gum in Singapore. Vandals used to stick their chewing gum on door sensors or would find some other way to mess with public transportation, so the country had to spend around $150,000 annually to clean that. It was easier to ban it by law, so no gum can be bought, sold, or blown into bubbles over there. Not a good idea to import them either. Going to Greece? Good. Have a safe trip. And pick the right shoes. Ever since 2009, no high heels are allowed at the Acropolis. Not that Greeks have anything against stilettos, but they simply wanted to protect their ancient ruins from damage those pointy things can cause. That, and the fact that it's not really practical for such terrain anyway. In the Italian city of Milan, it's illegal to frown in public. Or at least it was a couple of centuries ago. Through difficult historical times, Milan had to create a way to stand out, which is why there was a law requiring people to smile and generally be in a good mood in public places. Germany has highways where you can drive over 100 miles per hour. But if you get crazy with speed and run out of gas while still on a highway, You'll pay a nice fine for that. Are you 1 to 2 miles away from the gas station and want to get there on foot? Better not. That's another fine. Germans make it your responsibility for filling your car. And walking along the highway is not that safe, as is leaving your car on the side of the road. A Winnie the Pooh t-shirt. That brings back some good old memories. Well, memories are sometimes better left at home. Since Winnie doesn't wear pants, Poland decided to ban this character, so you can't have it on your clothes, around schools or playgrounds, no matter what age you are. Just in case you ever wake up and decide it's time to do some hiking in Switzerland without your clothes on, don't. For some unknown reason, some travelers made this type of hiking a thing in Switzerland a couple of years ago. So Swiss officials kindly ask you to keep your clothes on. Greetings from New Zealand. If you want to spend your Sunday afternoon flying with a rooster in a hot air balloon, you might have to find another country to do it, because here, it's illegal. Sorry. Staying in their neighborhood, in 1966, there was a law that prevented you from flying a kite in Australia in a public space if that bothered other people. Luckily, 1966 was a long time ago, so no one will remember this if you decide to have some flying kite fun in a park. Hopefully. While you're there, you can't tie your goat to your vehicle. Also, no dressing as Batman and Robin. You don't want to prove to law enforcement you're not actual vigilantes, right? In some cities, taxi drivers must have a bale of hay in their trunks at all times. At least, they had to until 1980. This law came from the olden days, when horses were still all the rage. And you can't just fill a horse with fuel now, can you? Moving to the United States now. If you're in Washington, don't even think about going after Bigfoot. They passed a law in 1969 where Bigfoot was proclaimed to be an endangered species. So, they didn't say anything about the Yeti though. In Vermont, there used to be a rule prohibiting clotheslines, as some people voted against unsightliness of others' linen and underwear hanging in everyone's view. That's why they made a new regulation. You can't forbid people to put up clotheslines. One rule against another. Yep, that should work. Shh, can you hear that? Someone's talking behind this door. Oh, I wonder what they're saying. Stop right there! At least if you're in Oklahoma. The law says you can't secretly wander around and, accidentally, overhear someone's conversation and then repeat or publish it later. So if you have anything to share, go tell it to the people of Oklahoma. Your secret is safe there. If you ever take a walk in Nevada and then decide to lay down on the sidewalk and take some rest, think twice, since that's illegal there. Don't sit either. You won't get away with it. Nuances, you know. If you're from Baltimore, Maryland, remember not to bring your lion to the movies. I know the big cat wanted to see it badly, but rules are rules. Also, while you're there, remember a couple of more things you shouldn't violate. No saying bad words in public places. No eating while swimming in the ocean. And no sleeveless shirts in public parks. You shouldn't throw bricks onto a highway in Iowa, unless you get written permission from the city council. Well, when you think about it, it's fair enough. If you don't feel like looking at large shiny billboards all over the city, go to Hawaii, since they banned those in 1920. Well, definitely not the only reason to visit Hawaii, but it's good to know. Meanwhile, other states like Vermont and Maine followed suit and are proud of it. One town in Georgia takes eating fried chicken very seriously. No fork, you eat it with your hands. In fact, in 2009, a woman who celebrated her 91st birthday in a restaurant was eating chicken with a fork when the police came and told her she was under arrest. The lady was later pardoned, but careful how you eat your chicken in Georgia. What else is there to say? Speaking of which, do you know why the chicken crossed the road? Not sure, but what I do know is that these jokes certainly weren't made up in Georgia, since there, it's illegal for a chicken to do just that. You think silly string is fun? Well, a town in Alabama doesn't agree on that, because it says a firm no to keeping, using, storing, selling, manufacturing, or giving away any kind of snap pops, spray string, or similar substances. Yikes. Also, when you're there, don't drive blindfolded. It's been passed as a law, which means they take the phrase, "keep your eyes on the road," quite seriously. Okay, enough is enough. No more sleeping in a bathtub, donkey! Something people in Arizona must say to avoid breaking a law. In the 1920s, local people could see a rancher's donkey in a bathtub carried by a flood. The flood was caused because a local dam broke, and the tub was abandoned in the rancher's backyard. The donkey simply decided to take a nap in it. And you know how it goes. Long day, warm afternoon, post-lunch rest, just couldn't help it. After they managed to save the animal from the sailing tub, the town decided to prohibit donkeys from sleeping in a tub. You know, just in case. In Connecticut, a pickle must bounce in order for it to be considered a pickle. In the 1940s, 2 men were even arrested for selling pickles that weren't legitimate because they didn't bounce. Now, the question is, how exactly does a pickle bounce? More from the Meanwhile in Connecticut episode. It's illegal to cross a street while walking on your hands. Oh man, that's one of the hardest ones not to break. Your best friend is having a birthday. What could you give her? A spa day voucher? Tickets to Disneyland? Dinner at a fancy restaurant? A rat? Well, unfortunately, a rat is out of the legal game if you're in Montana. Well, you've got to respect the law. Luckily, if you're from Florida, rats are a completely fine gift. At least, way better than some bigger animals. Because while you're there, you need to pay parking fees for them. Camels, elephants, horses, and the rest of the animal crew. Sorry guys, you gotta respect the rules.
Now, flying has long become routine for many people. But even frequent flyers sometimes don't know about things you should never do on a plane. Ooh. No bare feet on a plane. It's one of the biggest no-nos of air travel. Even if we omit the topic of unpleasant odors. The airplane floor is extremely filthy. People with contagious foot problems might have been walking the aisles barefoot before you. There's likely to be a lot of dirt left after previous passengers. And don't even get me started on the floor in the lavatories. Ew. If your feet need some freedom, take off your shoes, but at least wear your socks, or bring along a pair of light slippers. Keep in mind that the pressurized air in the passenger cabin is just as dry as it is in the Sahara Desert, with only about 20% humidity. That's why your skin may feel discomfort after a flight. But wouldn't it make more sense to install several humidifiers that could add some moisture? But this extra load would cost airlines lots of money. Plus, the plane's airframe is mostly made of aluminum and other metals, and humid air could lead to corrosion. So, don't forget to bring a moisturizer and use it during the flight. Always secure your tray table as soon as the plane starts moving on the tarmac, and never lower it during the takeoff and landing. It's a security measure, which ensures that you and the other passengers will have a clear pathway in case of an emergency evacuation. Also, keep your seat in an upright position during takeoff and landing. First of all, a reclined seat can seriously slow down an emergency evacuation, since it will block a person sitting behind. What's more, the more backward you're leaning, the harder it is to get into the brace position during an emergency landing. Now try to avoid snoozing during or right after takeoff and landing. For one thing, it's not the best thing for your health. The main problem is that the air pressure inside the cabin changes very quickly during these phases of the flight. This, in turn, affects the air pressure in your ears. It's important to be alert during this time to relax and open up your ears, for example by yawning or swallowing frequency. Chewing gum works for me. If you're sleeping, you can't do this, which can lead to permanent damage. And of course, there's a safety issue. Most accidents happen during takeoff and landing. If you're sleeping during these stages, you might not be alert and conscious enough if an emergency happens. Now, this next recommendation comes from the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. According to them, you might want to skip on hot drinks on a plane. The water used to make tea or coffee doesn't come from bottles, it's regular tap water. And water tanks on airplanes are often old and full of bacteria. In 2004, there was a study which found that more than 12% of water samples contained harmful bacteria. But if you still decide to have a cup of hot beverage on a plane, never pour coffee or tea on your own. Flight attendants are trained to handle this task in crowded aisles of a moving airplane and won't accidentally burn you or other passengers. Now, it's probably better if you don't order Coke on a plane. The cabin pressure, so low up in the air, causes a lot of foam. For apparent reasons, flight attendants don't want to serve you a cup filled with froth. That's why they'll fill only half the cup, then wait for the bubbles to settle, and then finish pouring. That can take ages. Keep your air vent open. This way you'll minimize the spread of germs. Planes have high-quality air filters. They'll catch up to 99% of all airborne germs, so you should be safe there. But make sure to wipe that tray table. With 8 times more bacteria than the toilet flush button, it's the dirtiest place on board. Another thing you should avoid is leaning your head on the window if you have a window seat. You never know who occupied your seat before you, and, in any case, the glass is likely to be covered with germs. Say no to backless sandals and high heels on a flight. I do. There are very serious safety reasons for such a request. The first is that both these types of footwear make it very difficult to evacuate the aircraft fast. If you wear high heels, you will anyway have to leave them behind in case the crew is using emergency slides during an evacuation. The heels are very likely to damage the slide, so off they go. Now ask yourself, do you really fancy running away from the airplane barefoot? I'll answer that for you. Nope. Instead, wear sturdy shoes with a solid sole. In this case, you won't find yourself standing on the hot tarmac or in the weeds without any footwear at all. Don't stuff heavy objects into overhead compartments. Your things may not stay inside during severe turbulence, and while falling out, they will injure you and other passengers. Ow! That's why, if it feels difficult to lift something into the overhead compartment, better put it under the seat in front of you or elsewhere. Now, don't blame the pilots for the hard landing. When you experience it in bad weather, it might be intentional. If the runway is covered with water or snow, the plane has to touch down hard in order to break the water layer and prevent aquaplaning. Otherwise, the water can perform the role of a lubricant, and the plane won't be able to brake or respond to any control. Deploying an emergency slide when there's no emergency is a very bad idea. It can cause hour-long delays and cost airlines thousands of dollars to pack the undamaged slide back into its container. Why would someone do it? Apparently, some think it'll help them get off the plane faster. Well, they're an idiot. Don't be one yourself. Just keep in mind that it doesn't work this way. Don't ignore the instructions of the cabin crew to open window shades during takeoff and landing. This way, flight attendants can see what's happening outside, assess the situation, and act fast, organizing the evacuation. For example, if there's a fire outside one exit, they will redirect passengers toward another door. Avoid carrying spray deodorants or shaving cream in your carry-on baggage. Both these things tend to explode mid-flight and therefore aren't allowed on board the airplane. A much better idea is to choose stick deodorants. You also mustn't keep power banks in your checked luggage. And if you want to bring one on board, its capacity shouldn't be more than 20,000 milliamps. Besides, you shouldn't use them during the flight since they might catch fire. In general, lithium batteries are safe to use, but since they're high energy, they can catch fire if they're not treated with care, misused, or if there's a manufacturing fault. Such batteries have been the cause of quite a few fires on board airplanes, as well as during ground handling. Do not worry about airport scanners, they won't harm your health. Otherwise, airport employees wouldn't be able to stay near them without special clothing. Even when you're passing by a baggage scanner, the risk is minimal. And the last one, don't act like a jerk on board. Behave yourself. I know you will. Also, never try to land a plane on your own. Nah, don't laugh, I'm not kidding. In movies, they often show us that something happens to the pilots and they can't land the plane. And that's when the main character, a very skillful person, starts their game. Unfortunately, it's close to impossible to do it in real life. Even if a person is a genius, is fond of computer simulators that match the real model of an aircraft 100%, and is ready to follow all the instructions from the ground, they're likely to fail due to one simple aspect: stress. It is true that there have been cases throughout history when amateurs landed smallish private planes after the incapacitation of a pilot. However, there has never been a case of a non-professional pilot landing a commercial passenger airplane. It's only in the movies.